Right guys, Hillbilly Halfwit here, Gaza. We're going to look at what is the emergency. Is it the farming emergency? Is it the climate emergency? Or is the NHS emergency? And what should we be spending the money on? Which is more serious? Which actually is the emergency? So I start off by looking at this first photo, which says it all really. Without any of it, any person in the world cannot survive without having food 2 or 3 times a day. So remember, the farmer is key, and he's forgotten about all the time. And surely a farmer should be able to have a decent wage. You know, after all, everybody deserves a decent wage. So what we're going to look at first here is this. We're always being told about this climate emergency. So let's have a look. What is the emergency? In my opinion, the emergency is the NHS. So let's see. Right, we're going to go over to these numpties here in the Senedd. And I'm only talking about Wales because that's where I live. If you're in England, you can talk about England. This is where I live, and Welsh Labour are in charge. And they've decided to spend 4.8 billion, which is 4,800 million on a climate change emergency, apparently, instead of on us citizens and the NHS and farmers who actually feed you 3 times a day. So let's have a look. Let's have a look. You've seen this one with me before. At the top is the wages we spend. At the bottom is what we're spending on other, building infrastructure or whatever. At the top, if you see health and social services, got a big wage bill, which you'd expect because it's good. I'm not anti-NHS at all. If anybody knows me, I've had an eye operation to help my eyesight. My dad had lots of help with carers, and I looked after him for 10 years. I actually think the world of carers. I think it's one of them things that should be paid more, and it should be a trade, because I spent half an hour trying to keep my dad alive on the kitchen floor with one of the carers, waiting for an ambulance to turn up, and he died there. So I know exactly what happens in the NHS. So I'm not anti-NHS at all. So look at the money at the top. That's correct, obviously. You need good wages and everything like that. If you look down the bottom, what's going on there on the left-hand side with that climate change, eh? 4.8 billion. And if you look on the top right-hand side, health and social services. So that's what's going on. All the money that should be invested into the NHS, in my opinion, is going to climate change. And all the money that should be feeding us all, a rural affairs, is nothing, next to nothing on the bottom, and it's next to nothing on the top. It's actually around 300 million. That's about it. So obviously this climate change emergency is no emergency. It's not big enough. So it's quite happy for hundreds and thousands of people to die from not getting treatment. So let's look at this again. Look, here's the capital budget. That was that bottom one. 4.8 billion climate change, because that apparently is the emergency. And at the top right hand side, 1.1 billion of building new things for hospitals and things. What is going on, eh? Why aren't we investing more money in that? So rural affairs, nothing. Education, again, same as health. But climate change, it smashes them all. So we're going on to a report about the NHS in Wales. Now, Labour have been in charge of Wales for 25 years. I know people working in the NHS, and they're really nice people. Matty, one of my friends on here, works at the NHS. They work hard. They deserve proper pay. Top management is the problem in the NHS, as we know. Waste. And as I've shown in one of my last videos, wasting millions and millions and fraud. So let's go through it. Healthcare Inspector of Wales is responsible for inspecting all aspects of NHS across the country, and his annual report paints a troubled picture of the health service in Wales. That sounds like an NHS emergency to me, where the money should go. A damning report on the state of the NHS in Wales has said there's unrelenting pressures on the healthcare service across the country, and initiatives to support the service are not making a difference at the front line. There are risks relating to emergency care, staffing levels, poor patient flow, and the accessibility appointments. Patient flow, as well as intense daily pressures around patient admission and bed management, is the main issue. All NHS hospitals in Wales are experiencing it this year. Patients are frustrated with the long waits they are experiencing, and staff are not satisfied with the immensely pressured environments they find themselves in on a daily basis. The damning report from the Health Inspectorate Wales summarised the annual activity of its inspectorate across Wales and the NHS, of which there are 178, as well as independent healthcare services. Poor patient flow has been major issues in hospitals across Wales this year. There have been repeated incidences where hospitals have declared major incidents due to a number of people in emergency departments or waiting outside them in ambulances. That is emergency, isn't it? I think that's more important than a climate emergency, because people are dying on that day. That is an emergency. In an interview on BBC Wales this year, Lee Brooks, Director of Operations for the Welsh Ambulance Service, said patient flow problems stem from challenges that hospitals face in discharging patients back to their community. Many people need care packages which are difficult to arrange or simply aren't available. This means they aren't being discharged in a timely manner, and beds aren't becoming available for new patients through the system. Well, I know this of personal experience of my dad, and that is exactly right. There is not enough money to pay for that. The NHS hasn't got enough money to pay for discharging people back with community care, because the people at home can't deal with a person who is severely ill and needs proper care, like in a hospital. So I've had that personal experience of that, and that is true. Difficulties in assessing a regular dentist and receiving dental care, difficulties in getting an appointment with a GP, difficulties in assessing mental health. In emergency department across Wales has noted there have been problems with overcrowding, long waits for triage and longer waits for treatment, plus ongoing delays in being admitted to the most appropriate beds. Our findings show unrelenting pressure on healthcare service across Wales, whilst there are initiatives in place to help support healthcare services. Cope with increasing demand to our work this year did not find evidence of these marking a clear and a significant difference to services at the front line, the report said. Whilst patients may have been satisfied with the staff providing their care, which we all are, nobody is blaming the staff at all. It's the management and the government and where they're putting the money. They were not satisfied with the long waits and difficulty in getting treated by services in a timely manner. While staff continue to describe their passion for working with people and supporting people with their care, they were not satisfied with the immensely pressured environments of work they found themselves in on a daily basis. According to the report, many settings were issued with improved plans, recommendations. These are followed up by to ensure there have been improvements. HIW Chief Executive Alan Jones said, "No more than ever, healthcare in Wales needs continued innovation and a vision and understanding of what works and what does not. In these challenging times, HIW has a clear role to play in providing independent assurance on the quality of healthcare services, highlighting what good looks like and providing challenge where standards are not being met. Our work has once again illustrated the sustained pressure on healthcare services across Wales, highlighting risks relating to emergency care, staffing levels, poor patient flow and the accessibility of appointments. Through our work, we will have once again seen a highly skilled and committed workforce delivering care with compassion, innovation. The workforce in NHS remains its biggest asset and central to navigating the challenges that drive ahead." Now, as I said originally, and after reading through that's out of one of the big papers, talking about Welsh Labour running the NHS, that sounds like an emergency there. That sounds like an emergency now, where people are dying, not getting the cancer care, not getting home from the hospital, bed blocking. That sounds like that needs huge amounts of money to sort it out. Now that is an emergency to me. So that's where we should be spending that £4,800 million. That is the emergency in Wales. Let's have a look at the climate. And this is from National Geographic Kids. So what is climate change? Now, you all been seeing all this has been told to your kids And you either believe it or you don't. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail on this one because they will censor the video. Now, from what I've seen, when I first got into this in the year 2000, I was scared witless about this because Al Gore was saying a lot of stuff that sounded very scary. There was going to be 7 foot of sea level rise and all sorts. So I started following this very closely then. I was one of the only ones, and every year I keep up with this, and not many people do it, and my mates know it drives them insane because I do know everything about it. So I can tell you for a fact that sea level rise has been 2.3 millimeters a year for the last 200 years, and that was measured at Sydney Harbour manually and is still measured there. So it's not 7 foot as was predicted, and the Arctic hasn't started to melt neither. That's a load of nonsense. And just as a matter of fact, if all the sea ice that was on the sea melted tomorrow, it's the same as a boat. A boat displaces the same weight as it of water as it pushes out, so the sea level wouldn't rise at all. It would only rise if the land ice has melted. So, whoop, hold on, I got off that again. Why do I do that all the time? Here we are. I always do that. So it's gone to the next thing. What causes climate change? Burning fossil fuels, obviously. Now, that to me is pollution. Stopping pollution, not climate change. You need to stop polluting the world. Now, that's what I look at that as. Now, the heat of the Earth, from what I understand, and I've looked at this very closely, we are only 3/10 of a degree higher, 3/10 of a degree higher than 1860. So the temperature went down during that period and has climbed back up to that period. Now in the year 2000 we went to a hottish period, but then that went down and we're back at that period again. So we're at the same temperature as we were in the year 2000. Go and look if you don't believe me, because I know it's right. Damn it, I've done it again. There we are. So this is what our kids are hearing off National Geographic Kids. Farming. Believe it or not, cows' eating habits contribute towards climate change, just like when cows eat, methane, a type of greenhouse gas, builds up in their digestive system and is released in the form of a burp. That might sound funny, but when you imagine that there are almost 1.5 billion cows releasing that gas in the atmosphere, it sure adds up. Well, those of people who follow this know that is nonsense. And that methane, if the cow hadn't have eaten it, see that grass there? That grass would have grown up that she wouldn't have eaten, and it would have rotted down in autumn and released exactly the same methane without the cow being involved. Methane isn't a gas that doubles onto each other. It goes up into the atmosphere, then after 10 years, it slowly turns into CO2, and that drops down and feeds the plant again. It's a cycle, a carbon cycle. So that is false information there that our kids are having. How will people be affected by climate change? Climate change won't just affect animals, it's already happening in the impact on people too. Most affected are some of the people who grow food we eat every day. Farming communities, especially in developing countries, are facing higher temperatures, increasing rain, floods and droughts. Are they? Well, if you look at the details of this on NASA, you will find that that is not true. We are having weather. The climate is measured over a 30-year period, and everything in between is weather. So those of us who've lived on this earth for 50 years, or some more, they realise this is what it is. The moon affects us. I go beach detecting, and every 2 weeks we have a high tide and a low tide. That's what the moon does. Sun does the same thing. There's a thing called the Milankovitch effect, where every 30 years we're closer and further from the sun. So the closer you are to the object, the warmer you'll be. That is it. That's what I believe myself. But anyway, this is what we're seeing, and this is what our kids are seeing all the time. Lots of it is designed to frighten the living daylights out of them. Now, we had this the other day. Look at the poor old polar bears. What have we been doing to them? Now, I put this up the other day that actually they've tripled the amount it was in the early 60s. So instead of them dying, there's 3 times more. I can't remember, was it 36,000? I can't remember off the top of my head. 36,000 or 26,000 polar bears, and they're 3 times more than they were in the 60s. So that is a bit of nonsense as well. So of course you need to look after the earth and the animals and the wildlife, but I don't call this an emergency. It is something that needs dealing with, but it isn't an emergency. So we've gone through that now. Obviously there's problems, and like I think pollution is what we need to be dealing with to make our world a cleaner place. But I don't call that an actual tomorrow emergency. I call an emergency like Putin going to nuclear bomb us an emergency. That is more of an emergency than climate change. Now the thing is, with the hospitals that I've been talking about, everybody working in a hospital needs food. So that farmer has got to feed them people. And so he's key in all of this. We're not locked up, even bothered about it. They're really, these people in charge here in the Senedd have forgot where they get fed every day. Now, in my opinion, this money on the left and this climate change emergency should be spent on some more of it on the rural affairs, but the vast majority of it. So currently we want 300 million spent on rural affairs. Now the rest of it, the 4,800 million that they've got on climate change, should be spent on the health service, because that needs the money. And that is an emergency, not the climate change emergency. That is my opinion on all of this, and this might get flagged up, I don't know, but that is what I believe. I believe climate change, it's always changing since the year dot. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money off this, especially in Wales, a lot of hangers-on. Now there's 4,800 million being wasted on academics, and they're filling their pockets with coins, and civil servants. Now in my opinion, that bottom left-hand corner, yellow, should be moved up to that green corner in the right. That's my own opinion on the NHS, because that is where we have got a problem in Wales and where it needs the money. So please comment, rate and subscribe. Share this stuff because I think it needs sharing out there. Cheers, Gaz.